There is no way. It shows, for one, the government can't sell it.
Today, why is Labor collecting dirt files? And do they work? Australia gets the world's biggest marine park. How pleased is Barnaby Joyce? Behind the green jobs fraud. And Brough on government claims he conspired against Speaker Peter Slipper. I'm Andrew Bolt, and this is the Bolt Report. How did we get to this age of spin, where what you say counts for more than what you do? 3 examples this week. 4 years ago, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd spent $600 million to cut waiting times for elective surgery, just as it promised so grandly.
As part of my national plan for hospitals, we'll inject $2 billion to take the pressure off emergency departments, free up hospital beds and reduce waiting lists.
But the COAG Reform Council this week reported waiting lists under Labor have in fact not got shorter, but longer. And the Australian Medical Association says even with 10% more money, there's still no improvement in key performance measures. So when Labor's plan is announced, big headlines, but when it flops, small ones. More spin. Environment Minister Tony Burke this week announced we'll get marine parks. 44 of them, one almost half the size of Queensland.
It's a bigger step forward than the globe has ever previously seen.
There's little evidence these new parks will make much useful difference. Burke can't even say what it will cost to compensate the fishermen he's putting out of business. But who cares? We'll be the first, the biggest. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
What we announced today becomes the largest marine protected area in the world. We have decided to become the world leader in marine protection.
World's biggest, world leader. What, there's an Olympic event now for mad green schemes? Is that why we've got the world's biggest carbon tax too? Third example of mad spin. The Prime Minister's head of strategy has reportedly ordered Labor staffers to dig for dirt on the Liberals, to even check old student newspapers. No big deal, says the Prime Minister.
I haven't seen that document, but I am talking more broadly about transparency and scrutiny in politics.
Transparency in politics, good stuff. But what did this same Julia Gillard say just 5 years ago about alleged dirt digging by the Howard government?
We've had a newspaper report involving a dirt file about me. They've got the politics of personal attack. What they don't have is they don't have any plans for the future.
What's worst about this? The wasted money, the useless green gestures, the mudslinging, or the spin? This insult to our intelligence. Senator Barnaby Joyce is the Nationals leader in the Senate and joins me from Brisbane. Senator, congratulations. Your state of Queensland will now have the biggest marine park in the world, thanks to the Gillard government. You must be pleased.
Absolute insanity, Andrew. And when you look at it, I've just heard the Labor Party people saying, talking about our food security. We're a nation that imports 72% of our seafood. This is going to make us even more reliant on people overseas, which is an absurdity. We, in our nation, only extract about 37 kilograms of seafood per square kilometre. The global average is 750 kilograms. Because we shut this down, it means we will get the fish then, I suppose, from Thailand. Thailand, for a size that a marine area only about a tenth the size of ours, a fishing area only a tenth the size, extracts 14 times the amount that Australia does. So what we're doing with this is basically exporting the environmental problem to somewhere else, not managing our own shop, shutting down our own industry. And if we want to turn ourselves into purely a tourist destination, well, we've got one of those in the world. It's called Greece. We should try and make sure our industry base is as broad as possible, that we are factual, that we are realists, and that we basically sustain ourselves. If we can't sustain our own fishing requirements in this nation, then we really need to have a good hard look at ourselves. This is Mr. Burke, who I saw standing outside the Labor Party think tank the other day, and he's about to fly down to Rio for the weekend. He's now imposing on us yet another crazy green scheme, which is really going to hurt some families and also destroy our economic base. It's just another mechanism of pulling away our economic rug from underneath our state.
So what you're saying is Labor hasn't figured out where its next sushi is coming from. Are you going to fight this in the Senate?
Yes, I think it's absolutely important. And it's important for all Australians to understand that, stay away from the emotion. When Burke stands outside an aquarium and we've got fish going past, when they show you, the wilderness of fish, it's all part of trying to affect your emotions, but they never tell you the realities. The realities are that we have an extremely stringent process of fishing regulation. We have one of the most highly controlled fishing industries already. Australia likes to eat fish, and we import 72%, so we can't sustain our own needs, and we're shutting down our needs. And all this means, of course, is that we export. If you're an environmentalist, you're just exporting the problem to Thailand, where you'll get strip fishing, where they'll take everything, and the reason they'll do that is because of our domestic policy. Well,
I'm interested in some of the other arguments that Tony Burke is having, the Environment Minister. He's delaying the $6 billion Alpha coal mine project. He's worried that the port might dirty up the reef. He's delayed Rio Tinto's giant bauxite project on Cape York. He's worried more ships might pass through the reef. And he hasn't yet approved the $30 billion James Price Point gas hub in the Kimberley that the Greens oppose. Is this just being careful, or is it being reckless?
No, what he's doing is he's trying to inspire a Green vote that he believes is the redemption of the Labor Party in the inner suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne. It's one more, a tilt at the Manic Monkey Cafe of inner suburban Nirvanaville. And that's fine, you can do that, but what happens, the economic consequences of that, is if you start shutting down your capacity to export a commodity, which is our only hope in these dire financial times, and we must not expect that the price of that commodity will stay up forever, that it's just going to stay inflated for the grace of Australia. It won't. If the price of the commodity peels off, we are in a real financial pickle. So I would advise Mr. Burke to land the plane he's flying at the moment, which is the Murray-Darling Basin plan, and not to start engaging in these other, class war events. When we look at the Alpha project, Mr. Newman has already brought about a tighter control of Abbott Point. We already have 5,000 ships a year going through the Great Barrier Reef, so let's not think that it's some sort of place that's devoid of shipping. And if we just keep on, every time that a Labor Party minister opens their mouth, it's to shut something down, then we really will get ourselves into even more strife than where we are. We're at $231 billion in gross debt. Queensland, after the Labor Party stewardship, is about to have its second credit downgrading. It's about to go through $100 billion in debt. South Australia's lost its credit rating. New South Wales' debt's out of control.
No, it's a problem,
clowns...
but you mentioned things being shut down. Can I just ask, you've been shut down, your attempt to go for the seat of New England, now held by independent Tony Windsor. That went instead to Richard Torbay, the independent, New South Wales independent. He's been selected by the Nationals. It now seems that it was just a mistake, because Labor's now saying that just 3 years ago he asked to be made New South Wales Labor Premier, even took out $200 from his wallet to sign up as a member.
Well, it's Mr Dastyari's word against somebody else's word. So my question to Mr Dastyari, if that was the truth, Mr Dastyari, why didn't you bring it into the media in 2009 when the story initially hit the papers? What I can also say is really it's the decision for the Electorate Council, and still is. It is great to see that we've got good candidates willing to stand for the National Party and so the coalition. That would be expected in the current state of the Labor Party. But let's let the Electorate Council make their decision. I'm sure that Mr Torbay will present himself in a very good light. But I always say the decision at the end of the day is made by the Electorate Council, and they always make the right decision.
Just after the ad break, we'll have on Mal Brough, the former Indigenous Affairs Minister, who's trying to stand for the seat of Fisher, currently held by Speaker Peter Slipper. Why are you trying to block him?
I'm not trying to block him, but I think there's always, if someone rings up and says, do you have any advice, and Peter Simpson did, well, then you give them advice. What's your alternative? You say, no, I'm not going to talk to you. Now, Mal is big enough and ugly enough to look after himself. He's a very strong profile. He has great credentials, and, you know, Mal can look after Mal. But I always believe in the contest. I think it's healthy for politics. I think it's healthy because it keeps people on their toes. So it's not a matter of blocking, but I do believe that we always need a contest.
Barnaby, Joyce, thank you so much for joining us.
Good on you.
Coming up, do dirt files work? Brough and Kristina Keneally are next. At least one minister in the Gillard government isn't happy with the instruction from the Prime Minister's Director of Strategy, Nick Rees, to dig for dirt on Liberal politicians.
I don't believe in dirt files. I don't think it's appropriate to use anyone to compile dirt files. I think, you know, what politics has got to get above that.
Joining me are former New South Wales Premier Kristina Keneally and Brough, former Indigenous Affairs Minister in the Howard government. Kristina, dirt files, are you happy that Labor's collecting them?
Well, I do think that the Labor government should be pointing out the inconsistencies, as the Prime Minister said, of people who say an industry is about to fall over but yet are putting their own personal money into buying shares. That's perfectly appropriate.
Absolutely.
To expose that hypocrisy. In my experience, some dirt doesn't work, particularly doesn't work when you're in government. That's not your job and it's not your role. Really, there are plenty of journalists out there who are willing to spend their time looking for dirt on politicians.
Who are you looking at here? No, but going through student newspapers, I mean...
yeah, look, I don't think it's a minor victory, and really you need to focus on the major battles. And the major battles are about what's important to the people of the country and jobs and the rising cost of living.
Yeah,
that's what governments should be focusing on.
Yeah. Do you think this is just payback, Mal, for Peter Slipper and Craig Thompson?
No, I just think it's actually the way the Prime Minister works. And it's just... I think there's a lot of relieved Labor members thinking she's not keeping a dirt file on them, that her energies are put into the opposition at the moment. I mean, there's probably a lot of that. But, it's an interesting one about you commented about how she's made this really valid point that coalition members are buying shares in coal companies. Well, a bloke rang up Talkback the other day and he said, well, there's a good reason for that. They're going to change the policy. This is a really good investment strategy. He said, when the policies change, these shares are going to go up in value. So it's not a reflection. Look, you should, as Kristina said, you should be, where there are inconsistencies, you should be pointing them out. But getting into the gutter, getting into what people did as students or whatever else, has no place. We're in a lot of strife in this country. Stay connected with what we need to do, growing our economy, and every minister and every staffer in the government should be doing that.
But you can't say this is one Prime Minister, one political party's issue. I mean, every political party has got dirt on their hands, so to speak, when it comes to this issue.
It's just best that you're not caught with a shovel in your hand when you're doing it. I think
Andrew,
that's
more
important.
to the point, she comes out on ABC Radio and supports it.
No, she came out very strongly supporting the hypocrisy and the inconsistencies do need to be pointed out, absolutely.
But I mentioned Peter Slipper. You've been subpoenaed as a witness in the federal court case in which one of Slipper's staffers, James Ashby, is suing him for alleged sexual harassment. Now, the government, and you were accused in court, being part of a sort of conspiracy to damage Peter Slipper and to help yourself. What is the allegation against you exactly?
Well, look, I haven't been subpoenaed as in... I've received nothing. All I've had is media reports. I thought the attack by Nicola Roxon and then followed up by Anthony Albanese yesterday was just extraordinary and outrageous. My understanding is all they're after from me are records of any conversations that I've had, as in telephone conversations with Mr Ashby, and I stand by everything that I have said.
Is there anything to come out that you think is going to embarrass you?
Absolutely not. To suggest that myself or any member of the LNP has been part of, as you put it, a conspiracy, that's an extraordinary allegation that we've conspired to concoct a story about sexual harassment. really is beyond belief.
You'll be happy to hand out over
Absolutely.
any emails.
In fact, I've said
got.
to my lawyers, look, you contact the government lawyers and make sure that we expedite things, because this matter needs to be dealt with. And I think what needs to be dealt with is the prima facie case that allegedly been put by James Ashby that he was sexually harassed. We should take those matters seriously, and they should be tested in court.
All right. Now, you mentioned the Attorney General Nicola Roxon commenting about the case. Let's have a little look at some of what she said.
There were, in fact, clear intention to harm Mr Slipper. There are a large number of Queensland Liberal National Party identities that are clearly going to be brought up within the course of these hearings, and Mr Brough is one of those.
Kristina, the Attorney General standing outside a courtroom commenting on the progress of a case and what's being alleged, a bit inappropriate, isn't it?
Well, the Commonwealth is bringing forward a case. She's answering questions as to why they're doing it and what's being done. She also made the point in a grab you haven't played that these are untested claims and they need to be tested through the court process.
Yeah, but giving a running progress report outside the court, a bit dodgy, don't you think? You wouldn't have done that as New South Wales Premier.
Well, certainly not, because I wasn't New South Wales Attorney General. The point is that the Commonwealth has been brought forward this claim, and she's just providing information as to what we're seeking to have tested. She is seeking to have tested through the court process. Look, I think it's entirely appropriate, if there are serious and legitimate concerns, that they not be tested, through a media debate, but in fact be tested through a legal process.
I thought the whole thing was leave it to the courts, and there she is having a free kick outside it. But that's just me. Mel, she did say quite a few LNP figures will be brought up in court. Any idea who we're talking about?
No idea whatsoever. I think that, just keep in mind that Mr Ashby came to me on the eve of the state election, and over the course of about a week sort of told me about these allegations. I don't know as though anything that they're saying today is anything more than trial by media. You've had Bob Carr, you've had Anthony Albanese, and you've had Nicola Roxon all out there trying to run the case, but not wanting the case to be heard.
And did you receive any information from them that was politically sensitive or confidential?
Look, I'll just provide all of my emails and all of my text messages, and others can judge whether any of that was inappropriate. OK. Look, moving on, a summit this week, another one, was held in Brisbane by Julia Gillard, an economic summit with business and union leaders. 3 state premiers skipped it, or Liberals, and businesses weren't happy with Julia Gillard's one offer that seems to come out of it, to cut company tax by raising other company taxes and charges. Kristina, did this actually achieve anything at all?
Well, one of the best things that came out of this summit was Stevens' speech, where he made the very strong point, that talking down the economy actually has real effects in the real world.
But that was his speech the week before.
Yeah, but it was part of the whole mixture of leading into the summit, and part of highlighting what the summit sought to highlight. You can have your own opinion, as Tony Abbott does, about the economy, and you can talk it down, but you can't have your own facts. You can't make up your own facts.
Summit, but Kristina, you don't call a summit just to have the Reserve Bank governor repeat a speech that he gave the week before. I mean, something's got to come out of it more than a speech by the Reserve Bank governor. But
let's talk about the fact that when you talk down the economy, you do have real-world effects. And what we have right now in Australia is a lot of people, starting with Mr Abbott, but people in the business community as well, willing to talk down one of the best-performing economies in the world. And that has real-world effects.
This is supposed to come up with ideas of how to improve the economy. And all we got was a proposal that maybe will give you the business tax rise that we actually scrapped the last time.
Because you couldn't get it through the Parliament.
Yeah, thanks to the Greens in part 2.
But there was discussions about productivity. There were discussions about Asia. There were discussions about the company tax.
There was a lot of fine words. There was no action. I read last night the final comments from the Prime Minister, and talk about wishy-washy rubbish. And as you said, the only piece of substance was, we know you want tax cuts. We're happy to give you tax cuts if we take tax breaks off you. In other words, nothing. And what we need right now is confidence. They all said that. And we have no confidence in the government whatsoever. We need an agenda. And what we need is action. We don't need more summits, and we certainly didn't need more platforms to have speeches. What we really need right now is industrial relations change. We need to be kickstarting the tourism industry. We need to be showing that we can actually govern so that we get foreign investment into this country, saying this is a place that we can invest in with confidence. And you know what came out of that? Nothing.
No, I tend to agree with that. But Kristina, is there a risk? We've had the 2020 summit, and almost nothing came out of that was implemented. We had the tax summit, only one tax. Very big, much change. The mining tax was implemented out of that. You had the red tape summit a month or two ago, which we saw nothing as yet. Now this summit. Too many summits.
Look, I don't agree with that. I mean, you do need to have a forum where you bring people together. You know, this idea that, you know, a summit is somehow you're going to wake up the next day and have a bill that's about to go to Parliament or some sweeping regulatory change that's going to be signed.
But we did have something like that. Remember the Bob Hawke, Paul Keating tax summit? Yeah. There was a concrete proposal that came out of that. That's the difference.
Look, you can have summits. Yeah, we had them in New South Wales where we had some significant changes to drug and alcohol laws as a result of summits. You know, an economic summit is an exactly appropriate thing to do. I'm interested in what Mr. Brough thinks we need to change in terms of our industrial relations system, because this is the big question.
Very simply, I tell you right now, the Sunshine Coast, where I come from, is you don't have the restaurants, you don't have the small businesses opening on a Sunday afternoon because they simply can't afford to. So therefore the mums don't get work. The businesses close down, they're still paying the same amount of rent. We need greater flexibility in the labour market. We also need to have greater flexibility so people wanting to invest in Australia know that our labour laws are not so prohibitive that it's not worth investing in.
What does that mean at the end of the day? Where is Tony Abbott's policy on industrial relations reform?
Tony Abbott has made it very clear that
work choices in dead and buried. That's what he said.
I think you will see actually industrial relations reform. I think it's going to be very interesting. But before I go, just quickly, what has Barnaby Joyce got against you, Mal, that is working against your attempt to get pre-selection for Peter Slipper's seat?
Barnaby's, like everyone, he's entitled to his opinion. The only people's opinion that matter in the pre-selection for Fisher are going to be the delegates that are going to be sitting there. Barnaby's not one of them.
Good on you.
What a diplomatic answer.
Very, very nicely said. Kristina, Keneally, Mal, Brough, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, what are these green jobs that Greens keep talking about?
If you sweep the floor in a solar panel facility, is that a green job?
Tariq Al-Suwaidan visited Sydney a few years ago. He preaches a familiar hatred.
To the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Jews.
Yes, Suwaidan, a TV presenter and leader of the extremist Muslim Brotherhood in Kuwait, has a thing about Jews. Here he is a couple of months ago on a television station linked to the Hamas terrorist group.
نهاية الحكم للسياسيين والسياسيين يتأثرون بأمرين المال والإعلام والمال والإعلام بيد يهود. أخطر قضية تواجه المسلمين على الإطلاق هي ليست الدكتاتوريات. أخطر قضية على الإطلاق هم يهود.
So, 3 questions. Why is this anti-Semite back for more lectures this month in Melbourne and Sydney? Why did Melbourne's Monash University let Suwaidan use its hall? And why is this tour promoted by allegedly mainstream Muslim groups like the Islamic Council of Victoria? But what worries me most, how many Muslims here want this kind of preacher? 2 weeks until the carbon tax and all those green jobs.
There's approximately 500,000 new job opportunities in green, or you could call it, if you wish, clean energy jobs in Australia sitting there by 2030.
But where are all the green jobs that have been promised already? Tasmania is our greenest state with the most anti-development government, but it's now got the highest unemployment in the country. Where are those green jobs? And what are those green jobs anyway? American politician Darrell Issa last week asked just that of the head of the US Bureau of Labour Statistics.
If you sweep the floor in a solar panel facility, is that a green job?
Yes.
Thank you. If you drive a hybrid bus, public transportation, is that a green job?
According to our definition, yes.
Thank you. What if you're a college professor teaching classes about environmental studies?
Yes.
What about just any school bus driver?
Yes.
What about the guy who puts gas in the school bus?
Yes.
How about employees at a bicycle shop?
I guess I'm not sure about that.
The answer is yes, according to your definition, and you've got a lot of them.
Green jobs, another green fraud. And that's the show. We keep asking Labor ministers to come on, but their boycott continues. We'll try again next week. Meet the Press is next with Trade Minister Craig Emerson, another one who's declined us. I'm Andrew Bolt. Goodbye.